Hey, Nerd Herd, it's Dynasty Nerds, and we're back with an episode for all you contenders out there. We have some Dynasty running back buys to help you go get that ship.
And we might go Benjamin Button on these bad boys.
Yeah, we got some real old fogies like AARP guys all the way down to these new little babies.
Yeah, we start up a little Martin Scorsese, and we end up Leonardo DiCaprio. Let's dig in.
Ready, set, hut, hut. Welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast, where we discuss Dynasty strategy, rankings, and all things NFL. So get ready to geek out on fantasy football with your host, Rich Dotson.
And welcome to the Dynasty Nerds Fantasy Football Podcast. I'm Rich Dotson. He's Matt O'Hara.
Hey.
He's Garret Price.
I know how it's going.
That gets that alongside because this is our first in studio since our big break for the combine. We had to reset up the studio. And anytime we have to do that without our producer, Jared Wackerly, it's never swift.
It's never smooth.
Never DeAndre, never Taylor.
We've been working on this for, about an hour and a half? Yeah, hour and a half.
If I fall asleep during this, it's for a good reason.
So we are back talking Dynasty running back buys on this episode. On tomorrow's episode, we're going to talk about Dynasty running back sells that we think. So before we get into our buys, I just want to talk about the concept of buying running backs in Dynasty as a whole, because I'm a big believer in any opportunity I have. I really try not to pay a high price for running backs. I try not to buy the big term guys. It's really one of the worst investments you can make in Dynasty. It's the shortest.
I don't think any of us have
value.
a top 12 guy as a buy. I don't think any of us do.
Nope.
So you can see that's kind of universally.
Every single time we have a buy show and it's running backs, I do the exact same sigh that I just did at the beginning of the show. And I got to find a running back, 2 running backs to buy right now. Fine.
Oh, wait, you hear my first one.
Fine. I'll find somebody.
But
I hate these because you never want to buy. You never want to be buying running backs.
You never want to be buying the top running backs.
Correct.
Like I had an inbox offer today. Somebody offered me Jonathan Taylor and Rashee Rice for 1.6 Superflex Dynasty. I rejected it. I was like, dude,
That's a very fair offer.
Very fair offer. I was like, Marcel, I don't buy running backs like that at a premium. Definitely one on a second contract, right? And I was like, it doesn't work. That doesn't work for me. That's not my style of play, because I'm investing in a young, definitely in this year's draft at 1.6. I get a quarterback. I get, a Dunze Bowers for such a short-term investment. And for the most part, and we're going to be doing our episode, we're finally going to do another episode on why running backs are such a short-term investment, because the odds of them being a running back how many times in their career. We did an episode a couple of years ago. It was one of our best episodes ever. We're going to be doing that again here.
I feel like that's one you can only do every few years. You can't do it every year.
The data doesn't change much year over year.
Yeah, but we'll have some new data. It'll be fun.
So, and we know it's a very fluid situation with running backs. So you should, as a Dynasty GM, as a Dynasty manager, you should consistently be selling these running backs before their second contract and buying them only when you're a contender. So let's start there. You should only buy running backs when you're a contender. Yep. And that is it. And you're trying to find the best bang for your buck, and you should really just be focused on that season.
As a rule, I think that's correct. There's always weird situations that pop up. There's always like, well, why is somebody offering me this guy this cheap? I can turn around and resell him for this price. So there are exceptions to that rule, but I agree with that as a rule.
I mean, you're always chasing value.
Always
I'll buy
looking for
any
value.
running back for the right value. If you're like, hey, I'll give you Breece Hall for Jackson Smith and Jigba in 112, I'm like, okay.
Yeah, I'll take Breece Hall.
Yeah, okay. Definitely those, and let me be clear. There is a very clear difference between Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall. And you can probably throw Zamir Gibbs in there.
I would say so.
To everybody else, right? The outlier guys. But we're talking 3 guys.
3 guys that are young, putting up numbers, good offensive situations.
And a trade just went down in my, what league was it? I love my Nerd Herd leagues. I think it was the COVID-19 league. And somebody traded CeeDee Lamb for Breece Hall, essentially, is what it went down to. And that's like
close.
That's lateral
that's close value. It's pretty lateral there, right?
I would want CD, but yeah, I get it.
Me too.
I get it.
Yeah.
But the team, he could afford, what I mean? And it's always, we say this all the time on Twitter, like it's easy talking a vacuum, right? Like, of course I would have a CeeDee Lamb ranked higher, but sometimes when you're building a team, it's not too far off.
And I'm fine I talk about it all the time. I'm best player available in the draft, so I'm taking the best guy I can. But you got to fill your team needs with your trades. If you're doing best available player in the draft, you got to address team needs somewhere. And if you're not going to do it in the draft, you got to do it via trades. So sometimes they don't always work out 100% equal.
Yeah, I mean, if you build your team correctly, you can put yourself in a position, right? Like if you end up being like Matt has a team where he has Justin Jefferson, CeeDee Lamb,
AJ Brown, Brandon Ayuk, Michael Pittman is my fifth guy. And
pretty good group.
Yeah.
In that situation, and then if he needs a running back, then you go out and you trade a guy for like CeeDee Lamb. You're getting for CeeDee Lamb, you're getting Bijan Robinson or Breece Hall.
Yeah,
that's a good move for your dynasty team, right? Like, of course, everybody has CeeDee Lamb ranked higher.
Yep.
But you're trying to build a competitive team to win championships, and that's what we're trying to do here. And when I talk about running backs, that
you about said your guy,
running backs that are buys. I will always talk about running back buys as a contender only, because you should only buy running backs when you are ready to compete for a ship, and no other time in my eyes, and that time only.
Agreed. Not even on the upswing, just when you're already up.
When there's no swing,
no swing left.
You ate the blue pill and you're fully ready to go. You're in there. So let's
tolerate us, please, Garret.
I'll tolerate it.
I want to. I want to say, like, that's how I always approach this show. Is like, if you want to know why you're saying buy these guys, or like you're dumb to buy this. Like, I'm looking at this from a competitive standpoint.
Yeah,
and same thing with myself. Like, I'm always, if you're not Jahmyr Gibbs, Breece Hall,
or
Bijan Robinson, and maybe Devon Achane a little bit in there because he's the 7.0 R average per carry. It's pretty sexy. Like I'm trying to find a way like to capitalize on that investment, right? Yeah. Like I'm trying to flip that for another running back, more capital. So my first buy as a running back for a contender is Raheem Mostert of the Miami Dolphins.
Hey-o.
I think this is a fantastic moment. Best bang for your buck.
The old man
to buy a running back of his caliber. So we're talking about Raheem Mostert, who just turned 32, which is absurd to say to buy this guy.
But we're buying 32-year-old running backs.
Here we are.
But not only is he a dip.
We don't like second contract guys, but eighth contract, totally fine.
So this is obviously a 1-year rental, right? And I said at the beginning of the show, like,
this might be a 5-game rental.
It could be.
Traditional.
But last year it was not.
It was not.
So I'm always looking at these kind of guys from a 1 to 2 year window of value when I'm buying a running back. If I get 1 year, I'm fine with it. I told a story about trading for Ricky Williams, knowing it was his last year, but I didn't care because I want to win a championship. So I understand this is a 1-year rental for the most part on Raheem Mostert, but we're talking about a running back who just signed a contract extension that gave him $3.8 million guaranteed. Like he's playing. He's
on the team, which is the concern, right? I mean, like a 32-year-old running back on a team where they just drafted a guy.
Yeah, is he going to get cut?
2 years in a row, is he going to get cut? No.
So he signed a 2-year extension. They rewarded him. They didn't have to do that. A real contract, no phony years or anything. $8 million contract. $3.8 million is guaranteed this year, with a $2 million signing bonus. 3.71 of that's guaranteed. So basically all they did was give him $1 more million guaranteed of his contract. That's all it really was. They give him another $1 million guaranteed. They didn't have to do that. They rewarded him, and that's what good teams should do. And it's a good way to boost morale within a team.
I don't know the contract. I'm not looking at it, but I'm guessing they can get out after this year, right?
100%. Yep. I did look it up. The only thing guaranteed is 3.71. Yep. That's this year. And they gave him, said, a $2 million signing bonus. This is a running back who finished as running back 2 overall in standard leagues. In PPR leagues, he was running back 5 overall in PPR leagues. Now, he did miss the last 2 weeks. If you take out the last 2 weeks, you put him weeks 1 through 16, Raheem Mostert was running back 2 overall in PPR leagues. Out of the 15 games that he played, he scored 12 points or more in 12 out of 15 games. So sign that new deal, April 1st, extend them. And this is somebody who came out and really excelled in this offense in his second year in Mike McDaniel's offense. And he's in the same offense, which is always fantastic for a running back. They know exactly how they're going to use him. Yes, they drafted his replacement, and I think that actually sinks his value a little bit, makes him actually more valuable or more easily to obtain in Dynasty.
For sure.
And, I speak on this sometimes a lot on the show, when I'm a contender, I love trading for those guys that are, only 1 to 2 years left perceived value, because I'm okay with that. Because everybody is so desperate in Dynasty for the most part, trying to get out from under guys without just being stuck with the bag, right? Where like they have no value. Mm-hmm. Where those guys are so cheap to buy. Like I love to go out there and like Raheem Mostert is going to cost you 2/3 maybe.
Well, for
one of those lines,
there's not a lot of trades recently, but some of the most recent, Mostert and a 4th for Kendre Miller. I know some people love Kendre Miller. I'm not a big Kendre Miller guy. So
ditto.
I'd rather Mostert in the 4th.
Yep.
You can get Raheem Mostert for Devin Singletary.
I probably prefer Devin Singletary. There's
you got some age. Yeah, you got some age. You got a feature role in with the Giants. With
I was thinking more like, hey, even if I know saying this out loud to some people listen, like this guy's an idiot, but like you always got to look at this from a contender standpoint, right? Because if somebody has Raheem Mostert, not much of a contender, hey, I'll give you my 2nd for Mostert in your 3rd. Because then all you're really doing, some people see 2nd and 3rd, but all you're doing is moving down in the draft a couple spots because you're a contender. So you're probably you're hoping to pick 212 is what you're hoping here.
Right.
And then you move down to like 3-3, 3-4, somewhere else. Like you move back a couple spots for a guy who has the opportunity to be a high-end running back 1 in this offense. We've seen it work.
But even if it was 311, would it still be worth it to you? Moving from 212 to 311?
Yeah, if I win, anything's worth it if I win. And that's probably the high-end price you're going to pay. Like I think you can get him for a 1/3, 2/3. And those are like throwaway picks for the most part, gambles. This year's class is a little bit different, but still, there's still gambles for the most part. For a running back that's going to come in here and be at least a core player for 1 more year. And that's all when you're a contender, you're on a year-to-year basis trying to chase these. We talked about this on the Nerd Herd show, right? Like how, if you go back and listen to the Nerd Herd show, I talked about a contender window. It was one of our Nerd Herd questions. Like what do you look at a contender window? And I kind of explained out how you can be a contender for about 10 years, like anywhere from 5 to 10 years if you make the right moves. I kind of explained the moves that I've made in some of my leagues. So for me, there's no higher end running back that's going to be as dirt cheap as Raheem Mostert is right now. So if you're a contender, this is my number 1 buy because it's costing you pennies on the dollar. People that are looking to get out from under this guy, coming off a year where he was a top 3 fantasy football running back. That's absurd.
Yeah.
And it's strictly because of the age. And I love the offense that he's in. I don't expect Jalen Wright to come in this year and eat into his carries. If he gets hurt, he's going to get hurt. But even at the cost, the sunken cost is, even if you get a couple games out of him where he's running back 1, that's good enough for me. And give me that extra win. Because then sometimes, like, every win counts, right? Like, we play in a 14-game season. So every win counts. How many times have you, for people listen, or if you guys have seen, where you've missed the playoffs because of 1 game?
Oh, yeah.
And you had more points than everybody else in the playoffs, or like the other 4 guys ahead of you, but you lost that 1 game and you missed the playoffs because of it. And then you look back and like, oh, I would have won the whole shit.
Yeah, I would have swept through the playoffs because I had like an amazing run. Yeah.
Yep. I had that exact thing happen last year.
So I love Raheem Mostert. I love the cost. As a contender, he's the number 1 guy I'm going after first because he's going to cost me the least and he offers the highest upside. And if you get a guy like this, you can throw in your flex spot, be your running back 3, your running back 2, and then he's going to give you running back 1 performances or be your highest performance running back. What a great position to put yourself in to win a championship. And it's easy. You go in there, go into the Dynasty GM, use the league analyzer, see where he is, see what you get value, see what the other team needs, and kind of throw like things away. Like a guy like Kendre Miller. Could he be something? Could he not? I don't know. But I know for sure Raheem Mostert could thrive in this offense.
And that's what I love doing as a contender, getting rid of the maybes and we'll sees for this guy will help me win. I like doing those types of moves all day. Like even if you sacrifice a little bit of youth, sacrifice a little bit here and there. Now I'm not saying go crazy and like, I don't know what Zay Flowers will be, so I'm going to trade him for no. I'm not saying that. But these guys that are worth roughly the same as that guy, give me the sure thing, the sure points. And Mostert for that price is about the highest point volume you could possibly get for that type of price.
Like a Braylon Allen, right? Like a hot thing about Wisconsin 20-year-old running back. Like, hey, dude, I'll give you the upside of Braylon Allen.
Sure.
Buried behind Breece Hall. I'll give you that for Raheem Mostert. People are like, you know what? I'd rather take that than Raheem Mostert and just be dead. Again, stuck with the bag.
Yeah, given their situation, if they're not in any sort of contention mode, that would probably be an enticing trade.
Two guys that I really like, Tyrone Tracy, Rasheen Ali, guys with a lot of upside that I love snatching in the 4th round of drafts. I would give them both up for Mostert if I was a contender, easily.
100%.
All day.
All right, so moving on to my guy. I mean, I feel like this, a lot of these are going to feel similar because they're all going to be kind of similar aged guys and all that kind of stuff.
I got a weird one.
Okay.
It's coming up in a bit.
But my guy is Joe Mixon, 27 years old. Right now he's going off the board in Superflex tight end premiums as the 101st player off the board, so right around the middle of the 8th round. And, he's 27 years old now. He's going to be 28 by, the end of or by the start of the season. And obviously he's somebody that's switched teams. So unlike Mostert, there's a little bit of unknown there, but I think we all kind of love this scheme, right? For running backs going from the Bengals to Houston. They're both kind of a little bit similar, I think, but Houston's going to be a better situation, right? Mm-hmm. They're going from, he's going from an offensive line that was ranked 26th last year by PFF to the 15th ranked offensive line, and they also bolstered that by picking a tackle in the 2nd round. So kind of getting a little boost there in his situation to go on top of that. He did get like a contract extension and all that kind of stuff, but much the same as Mostert, this is a 1-year deal dressed up as a 3-year extension. So he's definitely going to be there this year, which is what we're looking for kind of at this stage of the game here. And there's not a ton of trades in the trade finder this time of year, but the most recent one was a 3rd round draft pick for him, which when I saw that, I was just like, this is insane. And this is what makes me like think that maybe his value has depressed a little bit and there's a little bit of uncertainty out there.
3rd round pick for a starting running back?
I'm going to say this about the trade finder, because I did a lot of trade finder digging for this episode. And it looks like there's a lot of funny business trades this time of year with leagues
that's true.
It might be like a weird trade
to offset
transaction.
something. Because I know for like some of my last understanding leagues, like I have to make some weird trades offset. We just saw a trade, like we had to reverse a trade for like somebody went to trade Brian Robinson, and part of that Breece Hall trade, he got Breece Hall and Brian Robinson for CeeDee Lamb. He sent Bijan Robinson and Breece Hall. Okay. So if you look back,
that's fair.
You look back, it was Breece Hall for nothing. But there's a lot of, when I was going through the finder, I saw a lot of weird trades in there that seemed like it was just league offsetting trades.
Yeah. Regardless, though, he is a soon to be 28-year-old running back. A 3rd rounder you wouldn't expect to pay that for a guy like this. But a 2nd rounder, I think is well within the realm of possibilities for a guy that
Bucky Irvin, for example, is on the board.
Sure, and he was a guy that finished as running back 6 last year in PPR. So And to be going from that to a better situation with Houston, from a running back standpoint, not necessarily, the teams are pretty similar. I think they're both kind of high-powered offenses, but from the offensive line situation being improved, and to be able to get him for a 2nd round draft pick, that's decent value right there for a guy that you might actually be able to have for a couple of seasons. It's essentially a 1-year deal there, but if he plays well, he could be in that system.
He's not ancient.
He's 28. He could still operate well, and to be able to do that, I feel like kind of like this is his. He's transitioned to that Frank Gore mold where he's just going to kind of like bounce around fantasy leagues until the end of his career, but he still holds value.
And people are playing longer.
Yeah, people are playing longer. I mean, I'm not expecting any running backs to play past the 30.
Mostert?
Well, Mostert is 32, but he is an outlier in the fact that he wasn't starting for most of his career early on. He didn't have a lot of tread taken off those tires early on, so he kind of has a little bit left.
Last year was his first 1,000-yard season.
Yeah, right. So that's what I got here on Joe Mixon. I think the circumstance and the fact that you can get him pretty cheap makes him a buy at this stage.
He was a buy for me last year, Joe Mixon, and he fell right in that category of like, hey, this is a guy who everyone said he's done after this year. He ended up renegotiating his contract to stay in Cincinnati, but everything we were kind of saying, you said, worked out last year. And what you end up with, because I bought a lot of Mixon shares last year. I gave up a late first for Mixon in some leagues. In our Ohio Dynasty League, it was Mixon and Dalvin Cook for like a late first. Cook was a bust, but Mixon went out. What I end up with, running back 6 I got a year in PPR leagues. Right. A running back who not only lost their quarterback there, who had a bottom tier ranked offensive line, and still came through an average 4.3 yards per carry.
And don't forget, this is a team that they went with Devin Singletary as their lead back because he was just better than everyone else on the roster.
Yep.
And Joe Mixon is leaps and bounds, I think, better than a Devin Singletary.
And a better offensive line he's going to with a Pro Bowl quarterback, 3 elite weapons in the passing game, now with the addition of Stephon Diggs, Nico Collins, and Tank Dell. Dalton Schultz at tight end, and they draft Kate Stover, well familiar with there. So a much better situation. Should have much better running lanes for Joe Mixon. And to be involved, you got to remember, I mean, Joe Mixon is a really good pass catching running back. I mean, this is somebody who saw at least almost 3 targets per game, almost every single game.
And the thing on top of it that gives me a little extra excitement about a Joe Mixon is, you know, we kind of expected it with Mostert, you know, being 32 years old, but they drafted his replacement in Jalen Wright. They haven't drafted his replacement in Texas. Like, they didn't use any draft. I don't even think they drafted a running back. Maybe they signed one in free agency, but
I'm sure they did. Yeah.
But either way, like, it wasn't like there was a 3rd, 4th, 5th round guy that they brought in that you're like, oh, I'm worried about. Like, there's nobody. So at least for this season, for sure, you know that it's his job, barring an injury. It's his job. So that's great security in my book, because there's a lot of other teams where there's a guy behind him where you're like, I think it's his job for the season, but something could always happen.
I mean, it's Dameon Pierce, but he was
on this team last year, and Singletary beat him out.
They did draft a guy. I don't know how to say his name. Jahar Jordan.
Oh yeah, he was drafted in like the 6th or 7th.
He was
round.
late. Yep.
So yeah, I'm not worried.
Not only would I pay a second for Joe Mixon, I'd have no problem giving 2 seconds for Joe Mixon, because if you give me, he finished as running back 6 last year, and this is somebody who consistently finishes as a high-end running back 1. Not high-end, but as a running back 1.
Yeah,
sure. So for me, if I can get Joe Mixon over Raheem Mostert, and I give up 100%, because you said the opportunity to be, one, he has the opportunity to be on the Texans next year, and 2, if he doesn't, like, he'll find a job somewhere. He'll get an opportunity somewhere, as long as he produces here. And he's somebody where everybody doo-doos on him every single year. I thought he was great value last year, and I bought a lot of shares.
And that's why I likened him to Frank Gore, because everyone just kind of kept closing the door on Frank Gore, and he kept going places towards the end of his career and kind of producing. And especially if you've been around fantasy for a long time, he was jumping from fantasy team to fantasy team because everyone just thought he was done, but he just kept on going. And
in our original Dynasty League, he was the most. I think he found his way almost to every single.
It was about 3/4 of the teams.
I had him
Frank
twice.
Yeah, you did.
Because I drafted Frank Gore his rookie year.
Yep.
In our actual startup, and I drafted him there, and then like 10 years later, I ended up getting Frank Gore back. I was like, this is the second time I've owned
Baby,
Frank
come
Gore.
back.
So I love that buy. Mixon's been a buy for me 2 years. Like, Mixon and Mike Evans have been my like top 2 buys for like 2 years in a row. The guys that kind of pay dividends. And we kind of talked about those guys on our show again last week. Like, these are the kind of guys you get to keep, propelling your championship. And some of these guys.
Here's another third. Here's another second. Like, who cares about those? Who cares?
You're like, definitely when you give out future years, because guess what? You're getting those picks back. And we talked about propelling that championship and keep it going. Like, you trade your first this year, it's a late first. Guess what? You get a whole nother first next year. And if you get a guy for 2 years, you're outpacing that window of picks per production.
And especially this time of year, giving seconds and thirds in season feel like nothing. You're like, you want Joe Mixon for a late second? Are you kidding me? If you offer Joe Mixon for a late second right now, you're like, well, I could get Jermaine Burton.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, maybe. So it's all about those windows. You got to know when to capitalize on those veterans. This time of year, when you're in your rookie drafts, that's the time to do it, because that's when those names are, you're putting rookie names to these picks now. It's not just some obscure late second round. No, that's
it's a possibility. It's not even just one name. It's a possibility of 3 or 4 names. That
you're telling me I could get Jalen Wright, who's very exciting. Yeah. You could get, there's a lot of exciting
Jalen
names.
Wright, even the late second, people are like, oh, I like the opportunity of Bucky Irvin. Like, those kind of guys that are like Jermaine Burton. And like, yeah, you can take those guys and sit them for a little bit and hope for the best. Or like, again, if you're in contender mode, you got to, now's the moment, right? Like, you don't care about upside down the road. You're in this window now. And they're short-lived windows for the most part, because, right now it's May. we don't know what injuries are going to pop up. We don't know where your team's going to be down the road. And yeah, of course, it's always risky buying a running back in May. But sometimes, like you said, windows of opportunity. Because guess what? If Mixon comes out week 1, rushes for 150 yards, has 6 receptions for 40 yards and 2 touchdowns, price just went up just a little
You're not getting him for a late second anymore.
Yeah, so these old running backs are great buys in the summertime because people are just like, definitely now, rookie draft time, because like you said,
got the fever.
You made a great point. You're putting a name on it, right? Like Jermaine Burton. I like Jermaine Burton.
I love Jermaine Burton. Yeah.
But if I'm in a window to win now, Jermaine Burton's not helping me win a championship this year, unless he turns into Puka. But again, that's an outlier.
Right.
So like, I want who's going to help me win now.
Right. And as much as I like guys in that range, Marshawn Lloyd, Adonai Mitchell, Jermaine Burton, Jalen, like those are all names I like. But they're not helping me win a ship this year.
I can find those guys later.
Absolutely.
Hey, guys, let me tell you about our friends at Sleeper. Guess what? Our app the mini is live on Sleeper right now. The Dynasty GM, pretty. You can use the analyzer. You can use the trade calculator. And my favorite thing is the inbox, right? Where all your trades from all your Sleeper leagues are right there. You can actually push trades through the actual Sleeper app. And right now, we could be more excited to be partners with them. And right now, if you don't know, they are doing DFS. And I know how many people that play Dynasty play DFS as well. And right now, there's not a better place to play DFS than Sleeper. They're offering up to 100 times your entry, the highest payout in the whole DFS market right now. You can track your fantasy players and your Sleeper picks in real time. All you got to do is choose 2 to 8 of your favorite players from pregame, live in-game, or even across different sports. Pick more or less than the predicted stats, and only on Sleeper you can get up to 100 times your payout. You can share with your friends and get rewarded together. Make sure you use that promo code NERD so our friends know that friends sent them their way. And get your deposit match and have a good time. You have all your DFS, all of your fantasy leagues, and now even a Dynasty GM in one spot. It is fully operational inside Sleeper right now. And then when you're a Nerd Herd member, you get that full access to that. And remember, you also want to download the Dynasty Nerds app because they're both in there. Check it out. Check our friend Sleeper. Check out the DFS. Use that promo code NERDS.
Get your whole estate.
All right, let me get to my first buy here. Compared to you guys, this guy's pretty young. He's only 26 years old.
Hey.
So we got a young whippersnapper.
I got a 26-year-old coming up soon.
I got a 24-year-old. And a pick poo-poo.
Well,
and a doo-doo.
I have a very young player as my last one, so I got
Oh.
but I'm not even going to say how old he is. I'm not. It's going to be a surprise. Najee Harris. Najee Harris is a guy that I am buying this offseason, which I did not think I was going to say. He's a guy that I bought last offseason. Very happy. He ended up being running back 13, had a very solid year. Not a great year, but a solid year because you were buying him at running back 19, 20 prices, and he outperformed that. I think the exact same thing is going to happen this year, and I didn't expect him to still be that low ADP-wise. Now, I'm still working off of last week's. Maybe it's adjusted slightly, but currently he is the 22nd running back off the board at pick 96, which is right exactly at the end of the 8th round mark. So he's going pretty late in drafts overall, younger than a lot of the other guys that we've been talking about in here. But the reason I didn't think he would be here as an option is because Arthur Smith came in as the offensive coordinator. And as much as nobody likes Arthur Smith, the one position that should be excited about Arthur Smith is big physical running backs. That's the one position that you should be like, oh,
he knows how to do this.
He knows how to get these running backs work. Okay, that could be interesting. And I wanted to make sure that that wasn't just something in my head that was true. I wanted to make sure that the numbers actually flushed it out. So I went back as his time as an offensive coordinator and his time as a head coach. During that time in 2019, he had Derrick Henry. Derrick Henry was a top 5 running back. Following year, top 5 running back. Then he goes to Atlanta and you're like, well, things shifted then. Cordarrelle Patterson was a top 10 running back. Then you get to the 2022 season, and that was the only one that fell off of this trend. But it was because they were trying to figure out who their starter was.
They were trying to get Tyler Algier.
And Tyler Algier, who we all know is more than a replaceable. But he's fine, but he's more than replaceable.
He's an Oompa Loompa.
Right. But even during his time, once he kind of ended up being established as the guy, still averaged over 12 points per game and was running back 21. So even in that little bit of like awkward window, and then Bijan Robinson was running back 10 last year. So he gives running backs opportunity. He gives them work. He gives them numbers. So that's something that I absolutely expect to be the case for Najee Harris. Now, this offense should also be a little bit improved. Kenny Pickett's no longer the starter. You would think they're going to get improved quarterback play. I still, to this day, don't know who it's going to be.
Hey, listen, Mike Tomlin's a smart coach. He ain't going to let Russ Wilson throw the football.
They're going to run the ball. They're going to run the ball.
I wouldn't let Russ throw the football.
So either way, we should get improved there. They did use some draft capital on some offensive linemen as well.
Yep.
So and if Russell Wilson is the starting quarterback, which right now he's trending to be the starting quarterback, we'll see that if that's the case. But what do we always know? And what did Najee Harris feast on when he had an older quarterback? A guy that didn't want to really run much anymore. Check down, check down, check down. That made Najee Harris running back 3 in his rookie year. If Russell Wilson's the starting quarterback and he's checking the ball down, Najee Harris is going to get absolutely fed targets. I think there is a very real path for not. Now, is it a long-term path? Probably not. They did not pick up his 5th-year option. He's going to be more than likely with a different team. But man, what do we see often in that last year of a contract? Those guys, they know they got to figure out how to get paid next year. Najee Harris has got to figure out how to get paid. I think they're going to run him into the ground. They're going to get as many carries as they can out of him. And I think this is a better offense and a great opportunity with Arthur Smith for him to just thrive. I would be surprised if Najee Harris does not figure out a way to be a running back 1 this year.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if he's a starting running back for the LA Chargers next year.
Could be.
On a team along those lines. But I think he is great value. He's one of those young running backs that scream value, kind of. Like he's entering that second contract stage. Depends on the cost for me, but that ADP value shows you like
he's actually below Joe Mixon according to this ADP.
But now, he's the kind of
if it's yours in 101 to 96, like they're going in the same round.
Yep.
To me, he falls in that category. He's the perfect running back that I like to, if I'm a contender, trade a first for, right? Like, because I not only like, okay, because I said, I'm looking for that 1 year rental. I think he's going to be a good opportunity this 1 year, but also like he's going to be, he's young enough to, he's got more opportunities on his hand. Even if it's timeshare running back, he's going to hold some value here for the next couple of years.
Yep.
He'll find a team. Somebody's going to give him an opportunity to be a running back next year. So for me, I have no problem giving up a late first for Najee Harris. Only if I'm a contender and I need a running back. Like I have a clear need. I'm not just going to add him. Like if I need a running back, he falls in the lines like if I can't get some of these other guys we're talking about, like the Joe Mixons, the Raheem Mosterts, because they're already on contenders, they don't want to part with them. Like if I'm giving up a first, like I'm trying to get like the Travis Etienne's, which will cost you probably more than a first. But sometimes what's really surprising is sometimes you'd be surprised like the running back value you can get by just offering a first. And I don't think Najee falls in the category of you have to give up first. I think Najee falls in the category of like you got to give up like a Christian Watson.
Yeah, well, ADP-wise right now, the veteran running backs in this range, we've got Joe Mixon, David Montgomery, Derrick Henry right in front of him. Then right behind him, we have Kamara, Tony Pollard, and Ramondre Stevenson.
But what receivers are circling?
Wide receivers in that range, Terry McLaurin, Amari Cooper, Christian Kirk, Chris Godwin, Christian Watson, Calvin Ridley.
Yeah, so like, and it's funny, so you say Christian Watson, he's the first thing that pops in my head of like, all right, like I'll gamble on an upside guy who like I don't really count on my team to be a contender if I have him. Like I'm not giving up Amari Cooper if I'm a contender because he's too good.
It's too valuable. Yeah.
I might honestly. I'm not sure. There's going to be more mouths to feed in this offense this year than he's had to deal with in the past. And
Cooper's too good.
I'm not sold on Deshaun Watson getting him the ball regularly enough. It was literally up and down. He would have a good week, terrible week, good week, terrible week, good week, terrible week. Like it was literally a pattern his whole time.
Okay, moving off my quarterback.
Hold on, before we move on from Najee Harris.
I wasn't moving on. I was just moving on to trade partners.
just on from Cooper and Watson.
Yeah, Amari Cooper.
The Browns.
I did want to bring up the fact that you mentioned Najee Harris. He obviously is going to have improved quarterback play, and you said that. He was one of these guys that Najee Harris,
in theory, should have improved quarterback play.
He should have some sort of improved quarterback play.
You would hope.
Don't you think?
I don't think so, but okay.
All right. Anyway, last year he was the 9th highest player running against stacked boxes last year. So I would expect that, combined with the fact that it's not Matt Canada, who I think had one of the more predictable play calling schemes or just play calling, whatever.
Well, yeah, in the second half of the season, Najee was a very different player than the first half with Matt Canada.
I just think I just think that will improve as well, and just kind of his efficiency based off of that, the fact that he has a better offensive line, all that should improve slightly. I don't think he's going to be a different player all of a sudden, but
Right.
I do think little things can be better and kind of improve.
I forgot how bad Matt Canada was as offensive coordinator.
When Arthur Smith is clearly a better option, you know
it's
that was
bad.
pretty bad. Yep.
Matt Canada's offense was like the national anthem. Like, even if you didn't know the words, you could hum along. Like you knew what was going on. You know what I mean? Like, I can see what's
I was
going
not
on.
sure where you were going with that for a second, but that was pretty good.
Yeah.
So
that was pretty good.
That's what I feel about that. But I love Najee Harris as a buy, and I think he's obtainable.
Good value. Yep.
Again, which is a perfect time to sell. He's going to a second contract, but like again, we're talking term seat structure here, right? Like, even for myself, like I'm not saying go out there and sell these guys. You have to, but like if you can get the value of what they're worth, sell. Same thing here. If you can get the value on the buy. Don't overpay.
Right.
But buy. And those are the windows I'm looking at. Like some of those
Absolutely.
guys. And then I don't think there's any receiver you said that I'd be like, oh no. Like Terry McLaurin's older than most people realize. He's closer to 30.
I think he's 29, right?
Yeah, he's closer to 30. Amari Cooper's going to be 31. So I have no problem. Again, I have no problem trading Cooper if I had
The hardest
to.
one would be probably Chris Godwin for me, but Christian Kirk, Christian Watson, Calvin Ridley.
Dude, when they announced, I'm telling I won't be here next week. I'm going to Tampa, Florida on Monday with my wife for 4 days. We're going to go see the Dave Matthews kick off his tour because that's what we do. Me and my wife met at a Dave Matthews concert, so we go every year.
Nice.
So we're going to Tampa, Florida. I'll be in Tampa, Florida Monday through Thursday. But then I read, if I was here next week, Chris Godwin would be one of my buys because when I read that they're moving Chris Godwin back to the slot, he's going to play permanently in the slot. Blue pilled me. Blue pill me. I have a lot of Chris Godwin shares. I got super stoked when I read that
you're
a couple
getting
weeks
old
ago.
when.
Yeah, well, that's true. See a lot. Got a lot of
just need a helping hand sometimes.
You know what? Me and Rich met at a Dave Matthews concert too. He doesn't take me to.
He doesn't take you every year?
Take me to the concerts.
Oh,
No, we didn't. I'm just kidding.
Let's see, did you guys meet in like middle school?
High school.
High school.
High school. Okay.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
I knew it was back in the day.
all right, my next buy is you take one away and you add one. You take away Joe Mixon. You insert Zach Moss.
Gotcha. I was wondering.
What am I taking?
What did I take away? What did I take away?
I'm in.
I took it.
I'm in. He's 26, doesn't turn 27 until December 15th. Just recently signed a 2-year, $8 million deal, $3 million guaranteed. Coming off his best year. Joe Mixon was running back 6, like you mentioned before last year, about the offensive line. And, I want to start at the offensive line where, the Bengals, they realized they have a good investment in Joe Mixon, and they had to fix this offensive line. And the offensive line was middling last year. They eventually, in their left tackle, Orlando Brown, paid big money. He was just okay. But they signed Trent Brown at right tackle last year, and he was actually their best run defender. He actually graded out the highest. But then on top of that, they paid their guards. They're probably the best offensive linemen. They drafted a right tackle in the first round out of Georgia, Marius Mims.
I couldn't remember his name.
They drafted him out of there. So they're really dedicated to boost this offensive line. So it should be better in 2024. It really should be better in 24. They're bringing Zach Moss, coming off his best season, and he's somebody who was just more efficient than Joe Mixon last year. I know I saw a stat when it came to efficiency. He was 0.7 rush yards over expectation per next gen stats compared to Mixon, who was 0.0. Mm-hmm. And, last year he ran for Indy, and Indy had a pretty solid offensive line last year, which is, again, a team that really boosted up their offensive line. Big jump from when they were doo-doo butter to pretty solid. And for Indy, when he was given 10 more attempts rushing, he was 8 times a top 14 running back. 8 times. 5 out of those 8, he was a top 10 running back. Or, I'm sorry, he was a top 8 running back. He was 8 times he was a top 14 running back in PPR leagues. I apologize. Okay. 5 out of those 8 times, he was a top 10 running back. Or I'm reading I can't even read my own writing. It's like me talking. He was
One more time. Reset it.
Okay. He was given 10 more rushing attempts 8 times last year.
10 or more. All right.
Out of those, he was a top 14 running back. 5 out of those 8.
5 out of 8.
He was a top 10 running back. 4 out of those 8, Zach Moss.
Okay.
And the offensive
So 50% of the time, he was a top 10 guy if he got 10 or more attempts.
Yes. Joe Mixon averaged 15.11 attempts per game last year. So that was the average. Out of those 17 games that Joe Mixon played, he saw less than 4 targets only 7 times. And he had at least 1 target per game every game. And he only had 1 target 1 time. He had 2 targets 3 times, 3 targets 3 times. Moss only saw 4 or more targets 3 times his entire time in Indy. And was a top 10 running back 2 out of those 3 times. And I know what people are going to say, well, Chase Brown, he looked pretty good. He looked pretty good at the end of last year. Mm-hmm. Chase Brown looked pretty solid at the end of last year. And I think, and right now that's the big hang up. I think it's going to eat into the dip on Zach Moss, where everybody's like, hey man, Chase Brown was like, it's going to be a dual carry threat there. And sure. I agree. That's where Zach Moss works well. But I want to go back to Chase Brown. Chase Brown wasn't some huge stud last year. Yes, over the last half of the season, weeks 14 through 18, he averaged 2.4 targets per game. And from weeks 13 to 18, if you take out the one run, which is an overtime game versus Jacksonville, where he had a 31-yard rush, if you take out that one rush from week 13 on, he only averaged 3.29 yards per carry.
Yeah, not good.
Where Joe Mixon averaged 4.3, just to give you an idea there. And even if you throw that 31-yard rush in there, he still averaged only 3.8 yards per carry. So I think, and this is somebody who I didn't love his tape coming out, but I will say I was impressed with the way he ran the ball. He was
better than we originally graded him.
Yes. So, and what's really, a big reason I want to get rid of Joe Mixon was his pass blocking. When you look at PFF, Mixon at his grade for pass blocking was 29.7. Zach Moss, 60.4. Where,
better.
And Mixon grade out better in the receiving game because he got more targets than Moss, but everything else is kind of the same for him. So this is a team where he goes from the Colts, where they were 10th in rushing, they averaged 121.1 yards per game, and the Bengals averaged 89.9. 89.9, they were 31st. But they're going to be better in 2024, and they're going to have Joe Burrow back, which should really open it up more for Zach Moss. So when I look at a guy who's 26 years old, who's kind of being suppressed a little bit by the Chase Brown, people are for sure that he's going to be a split carry situation. I'm okay with that because I think Zach Moss will be the thumper down there. They're giving him that they signed him a 2-year deal. He's getting that $4 million guaranteed, or the $3 million guaranteed. For the Bengals, that's good money.
That is.
That's good money for a running back. So I really like Zach Moss's opportunity to come in and be. And I know Joe Mixon was running back 6. I don't expect him to come in and do that, but I think this is a guy who can come in and give you probably, I would say he plays all 17 games. I think there's a very good opportunity that half of those games in this offense, he could be a running back 1. If not, a decent running back 2. I think he probably finishes his year as a running back 2. But for that kind of price to bring in there to have that kind of caliber player to be on your roster, I'm willing to pay a 2nd and a 3rd for a guy like Zach Moss of a contender. Again, because remember, when you say 2nd and 3rd is a contender and these are contender buys, we're talking late picks. Like when you're talking a 2nd round pick, you're talking the 20th, the 24th overall rookie. You know what I mean? Yep. Like it's a very shallow pool of talent at that point in most years. I know this class is different, but it's an outlier class.
Well, no, for sure. What would you be willing to pay for Zach Moss?
I'd go up a 2nd and a 3rd.
2nd and a 3rd. Okay.
I don't think you would need to based on the ADP.
Probably not.
He's going as our 177th player off the board, which I think is crazy value. Guys that are going ahead of him, some of these names are funny. Some of them make sense, but guys that are going ahead of him, Roschon Johnson, the Jerome Ford, the aforementioned Chase Brown, Tyler Algier, Chuba Hubbard, J.K. Dobbins.
I mean, and that's why I asked. You know what I mean? Because I feel like I don't have a real good handle on what I would pay to get him. Because I feel like a 3rd's not going to get it done.
No.
But the 2nd feels like too much.
It feels like a little bit too much for me. You said a 2nd and a 3rd, which is, I think, for me, way too much.
Okay. And that's the thing. Like the 3rd, like I always say, like if a 3rd's what it takes to get a deal done, I have no problem throwing a 3rd in and being okay.
Right. But even a 2nd feels like a little bit too much for me.
If you're a contender.
Yeah.
No, he's like obviously I want Raheem Mostert over him. You know what I mean?
Sure.
I want everybody you guys said ahead of him.
I like Zach Moss. I think he's in a good short-term situation. I just want to make sure.
I think he's a great 1-year buy. Yeah.
Yeah. I just want to make sure people aren't overpaying for him. That's why I'm trying to figure out.
It's probably the classic, hey, like you said earlier, I'll take Zach Moss in a 3rd and give you my 2nd.
Yeah.
I like that.
That feels better. That feels a lot better.
And here's the thing. I don't think Zach Moss is a 1-year rental. I think he's a 2-year rental.
Could be.
I think he plays out this contract. They got him really cheap.
They'll probably draft. It's a good running back class next year. They'll probably draft a guy. Zach Moss will get the first half of the season, and that guy will eat into it.
Potentially, we don't know.
Probably the most likely outcome.
They gave him 2 years, $8 million. I think that's really good value for a 26-year-old running back. Because you remember, next year he'll be 27 on that contract, all the way up until December 15th. He'll be 27. So I truly think Zach Moss falls in that category of hashtag 2-3 year windows. I think that's why I said a second, third. If I had to pay that, I wouldn't necessarily hate it, because I think. I personally, again, we're all speculating. You know, we play fantasy, we make these guesses. We're giving our best judgment calls here.
Sure.
I hate when people talk on Twitter like they speak in a matter of fact, like, because they don't know shit. So for me, if you ask my opinion, I think Zach Moss will be the running back on the Bengals. Probably splitting time with Chase Brown, but I think he'll be there for 2 years in this offense. And I like it because I think they're going to have to pay Jamar Chase very soon. They probably got to pay Trey Henderson. So
yep.
They're not going to want to pay any money for the running back. And for how much you have to draft a guy, I think if you have to draft a guy of relevance to compete with him, would make just as much money as he would. So they would probably look elsewhere.
Yeah. I mean, I like it as a buy. I just make sure not to overpay, I guess, in anyone's leagues. I mean, because Rich sees him as maybe a 2 year guy. I think probably 1, maybe 1.5.
Yeah, I think they draft somebody next year.
In Garrett's situation there. Personally, and that's coming from somebody that has lots of Zach Moss shares. Like I have 2 or 3 Zach Moss shares out of the 6 or 7 leagues that I'm in. So it's somebody that I drafted. I liked when he came out. So,
so if I approached you and said, "Hey, I'll give you a second, third," you'd snap accept.
Yeah.
If I approach you with a second, would you snap accept?
In this year's draft, yeah.
This year's draft, yeah. I'm talking.
To be fair,
I'm talking 25 seconds.
All right.
25 second, third. But if it had to be just a second in this year's class, it's late. Like same thing. Like if I'm giving up Jermaine Burton for Zach Moss, if I'm a contender and I need running back help, and this is all I can get. Like I like all the other buys we talked about. This is our 4th buy so far. And I might like the other 2 you guys have. I'm just saying this is my only option, because remember, sometimes we say Raheem Mostert, go buy him. We say Joe Mixon, go buy him. Well, guess what? If those guys are on contenders, which a lot of times it's more likely than not that they are because of their age, that team's not selling them. Right. So sometimes, we talk about this on Twitter. People are like, "Oh, you could have went and got this player." Yeah, it's easy to say, but that team's not selling them. Maybe. Or maybe they're on a team where that player is just not an active trader and they just don't make trades. Like, so sometimes you're going through the process to try and get these guys. So if I had to settle for Zach Moss, that's who I'm settling for.
I get it, man. I like it. Yep.
Hey, Dynasty Nerds, it's time to take your Dynasty game to the next level with FFPC's Dynasty Startup Leagues. Whether you're a seasoned pro or just getting started, FFPC has a league for you, with entry fees ranging from $100 up to $5,000. Choose from a variety of formats, including Superflex, Best Ball Superflex, Triflex, 1QB, and Standard. With weekly lineups, waivers, trades, head-to-head matchups, and playoffs, FFPC's fully managed leagues provide the ultimate dynasty experience. Most importantly, the leagues are here to stay. FFPC has never had a dynasty league fold. They manage the entire commissioner experience, from buy-in management to fulfilling your orphans. FFPC is perfect place to expand your dynasty league portfolio. And here's the best part. As a Dynasty Nerds listener, you can get $25 off any entry fee as a new member when you use the promo code NERDS. Head over to myffpc.com now to draft your team, manage your roster, and dominate your league with FFPC. That's myffpc.com. Promo code NERDS for $25 off any entry fee for new members. FFPC, where dynasty dreams become a reality.
I guess moving on to my guy, we're going to go a little bit younger.
We're slowly getting younger.
Hey, we are
player by player.
I started off with the old guy, 32. You went to 28.
28.
You went to
26.
I went to 26.
24. Going to be 25 by the season starts.
Call me Leonardo DiCaprio.
Trade him in. All right, here we go. All right, my guy is Zamir White. Currently going off the board on our ADP 99th, so right around the Joe Mixon range. But you're getting a guy that is 24, going to be 25 instead of 27, going to be 28. Last year, obviously, you look at the full season numbers, you're not getting the full picture. He finished as running back.
Talk about the last 4 games, Matt.
He was running back 56 overall over 23.
Put it in perspective to make it look good.
But obviously
Cherry pick the stats, please.
he had no role in that offense until week 15, and it was week 15 till the end of the season. So those 4 weeks is when he really turned it on. He was running back 9.
Ew.
In that short window. I think we've kind of broken that down a few different times.
We've talked about Zamir. We're pro Zamir on this pod.
I know. So I figured I'd bring him up one last time.
I thought about making him a sell.
I would
A little debate.
I would have hated you for
But
it.
you're right. But like the ADP, like I also thought like his ADP be much higher because he's the guy in Las Vegas. And then it turns out like I was like, oh, I thought I was selling. And you told me where he was going. I was like, oh yeah, he's definitely.
There's a lot of interesting running back 2s right now.
Right. And obviously the biggest reasoning behind all of this is he's 24. He's going to be 25. They obviously liked enough of what they saw in that small sample size to let Josh Jacobs go in free agency and then completely bypass the whole position other than Dylan Laube in the 6th round throughout the entire draft. And Laube is a nice back. I like him, but he's a pass catching complement to a guy like Zamir White.
Yeah.
So, I mean, those guys almost work hand in hand together with Zamir being the man and Laube just catching passes and kind of being the complimentary guy. So it kind of it solidifies him a little bit even more for me. And obviously with him being 24, you're getting multiple years on top of whatever could be the rest of his career. So 3-4 years maybe you're getting out of this guy compared to some of the other guys we're talking about maybe 1 year windows.
Probably not, but
that's the nice part. You know you have the 1 year.
Yeah.
And you're paying the 1 year price because he's in the range of all these 1 year guys. But you at least have the upside of maybe more.
Potentially.
Yep.
Getting up to that 3 year window.
I think the biggest thing you said was the way they just bypassed the position in free agency and the draft. Like they
did sign Madison, who's he's not great, but he's not.
You're right.
Awful.
I did forget they did sign
Alexander Madison.
I didn't. They bypassed the position.
He's not good, but he's not nothing. Like I think he's a guy that he'll take 25% of the work. Laube will take 10% of the work.
And that's where he looks the best because that gets you excited. Like, wait till Madison's the starter. We saw how that played out.
Yeah, it didn't pan out.
So anyway, for me, this is a guy that I would happily give up a 2nd round draft pick for him.
Easily.
Oh yeah,
and that's right in the range of all these guys. What we're talking about paying.
Yep.
And I didn't feel great about some of them, but I would do it. I feel great about this one, and I would just kind of slam dunk that one, feel good. Hopefully I get more than 1 year out of it, but if I don't, it is what it is. You know what I mean? It's a 2nd round draft pick. You're like you said, you're going to get another one next year.
You're going to get another one next year.
You're going to get another one the year after.
They always give you new ones for some reason.
They just keep loading into the system.
So
every
weird.
year.
You think I trade my first a lot? A lot of my teams you'll see like, draft capital. It'd just be like 25. Right now it says 25 first. All my other picks are gone.
26 first. 27.
Those are always the cherry on top.
Yep.
Always like, dude, you want a second to get this deal done? Here you go.
But I did find one in the trade finder. It was Zamir and a 24 fifth for a 24 second. So he was going for a little bit less than a second.
Easy.
Yep. Which is a slam dunk for me.
Yep. Absolutely love it. All right. Well, let's get to the youngest guy
Let's hear it.
that we're going to talk about. And this might be new territory for me. I think this is the first time that I've had a buy as somebody that we just spent time talking about as a rookie. Trey Benson.
Nice.
I've never done this before.
Yeah, this is kind of weird.
It is. It's a little bit weird. But here's my reasoning. First of all, according to our ADP, he's going right after a lot of these guys that we just talked about. So he's going right after Tony Pollard, Alvin Kamara, Ramondre Stevenson, Najee Harris, like all of those guys. He's going right after.
What are these people doing?
All of these guys. But let's even say, like, maybe that's an anomaly. Sure. Maybe that's weird. But even just in rookie drafts, to me, the gap between Jonathan Brooks, who I think is a fantastic player. I think he's a great player, but he's going 109, 110, 111, like every time. He's going in one of those 3 picks almost every time. Whereas Trey Benson is somewhere between 202 and 205-ish.
That's where he's living.
That's where he's living. I don't think the gap between those 2 guys is that big. And I have really gotten to a point now where whatever you think Trey Benson's value is, it's still a value. Because I'm looking at James Conner, and I talked about it a little bit last week or 2 weeks ago, the amount of breakaway runs. James Conner was one of the highest in the league, one of the best at breakaway runs, which is 10 or more yards. He had it at like a 15% clip, which was like 7th in the league. And you're telling me that Trey Benson's now going to be the starting running back on this team? This is a team that improved their offensive line. They improved their receiving game, and they are willing to feature a guy. When you look at what James Conner did just last year, and James Conner, there's nothing wrong with him. He's always been very serviceable, very good back. But I don't think anybody from even when he was a rookie to now would have ever said that he has any special traits. There's nothing about James Conner that you're like,
He's tough.
He's tough. He's a good physical runner. He's a professional running back, and he does that job well. Trey Benson has amazing size, true breakaway speed on an explosive offense that is willing to just absolutely feature their guys. And when I said that, I was looking at total carries and stuff. Carries per game, James Conner was like 7th. I'll have to go back and look at the exact number. For some reason I lost it. But he was easily inside the top 10 at carries per game. And this was on a team that was losing a lot last year. So you're telling me this guy was top 10 in carries per game on a team that was consistently losing? Imagine what this team looks like at the end of the games when they're winning games. If they improve at all as a team, which I think they're going to. They looked a lot better once Kyler Murray got back there. I love what their head coach did. Like they just drafted an amazing wide receiver in Marvin Harrison Jr. Like this team has a much better shot in the near future to be ahead in games. So if James Conner is going to get that kind of workload when they're losing often, imagine what happens when the game script is flipped.
They also signed Zay Jones, which I think is a great signing for them.
Yeah. So
he's a very good blocker in the run game.
So all of that to say, it feels weird as all get out to pick a rookie as a buy, but I don't think we've caught up enough to how good this player is going to be.
By the way,
I've already done it.
I did all the analysis by like our ADP versus our rankings, our consensus rankings, and almost every single one of the rookie running backs presented a nice buy opportunity. So when I saw you did that, I was like, yeah, this is going to work out great.
Makes
I think Marshawn Lloyd.
Yep.
Jalen Wright.
They were all. It's just the way it flushed out, the way the ADP versus our actual rankings of the three of us in this room, we all had them ranked significantly higher than where they're going.
Like I've already done it. I gave up what's almost, I would say, nothing's guaranteed, but what I had to predict, guaranteed pick 111 or 112 in next year's class. I gave it up for Trey Benson. He went, I think he went 2-3, and as soon as the draft was over, I was like, I need some Trey Benson. I don't have enough shares of him because I ended up getting way too many Jonathan Brooks shares. I think we talked about it last week. Like the way it just fell out. Like I had a lot of like 112 picks right there, and like Jonathan Brooks was just there, so I ended up taking him. You know, like he's the best player on the board.
Yep.
And like I said, he had a clearer path to right. Even though I had Trey Benson ranked slightly higher than Jonathan Brooks in my overall score, in tape score, it's just when it comes to running backs, I want a guy who has the clearest path. So where I had a 1A,
understandable.
I had a 1A Trey Benson, 1B Jonathan Brooks. Like I thought they were that close. I really did. And then the draft kind of flipped it to Jonathan Brooks became 1A and Trey Benson 1B.
Yep.
Where I thought in a normal draft, again, like I said to you earlier, this is kind of an outlier draft because it's so deep, right?
Yep,
in a Superflex tight end premium league. And all my drafts, for the most part, are Superflex tight end premium leagues. When he went 2-3, which obviously he'd go in the first round if it was a one QB league.
Yeah, absolutely.
I was like, immediately, this is late first. Trey Benson in a normal year would be a first round pick. Like, I love the player. Like, I bet I can get him for a first because he's going in a second. And I think it's an opportunity where, again, you take an outlier draft. If you have a for sure contending team to get a young running back, you throw your late first out there to get that young running back, right? Like,
that's the time to get him.
And if you're going to trade a first for a running back, you do it for a rookie.
Do it for a guy that has 4, 5, 6, 7 years left.
So I immediately, and I was like, dude, I think he'll accept. I hope he accepts this. And he did. He snapped accepted. And I was like, this is fantastic. And I bet in most leagues, if you're a contender, this is one running back you probably go offer first. I don't think it would work for Jonathan Brooks. He's going in the first now. But I think Trey Benson's in the perfect store because I wouldn't offer a first for Jalen Wright. And I wouldn't offer a first for Marshawn Lloyd. Two running backs I really do like. I would 100% offer first if I'm a playoff contender for Trey Benson. It doesn't even have to be guaranteed 111 to 112.
Well, those other
110 to 112.
Yeah,
I'm
those
okay
other
with.
two guys just don't have a clear enough path to carry us, which is why you don't.
And a little bit later
scores.
draft capital, and that's the thing too. I think we've gotten really hung up on like, well, Brooks was a second round pick and he was a third round pick. He was the second pick of the third round. Like, it was not far off from this narrative being very
an extremely deep class,
very
of
deep class where,
premium positions,
where a lot of things were just getting pushed into that third round that normally probably would have been a second round draft pick.
Yep. Very deep offensive line draft, very deep quarterback draft that we saw, and then a very deep receiver class where people were desperate for these receivers. So yeah, I think everything points to, if you're a contender, you saw Trey Benson go in that range we mentioned to, you should offer a 25 first for Trey Benson. And I think down the road, you're going to be very happy you did so.
Assuming you're a contender.
Always a contender.
Yeah, if you're at pick 1-3 this year, don't give your first.
Yeah. Remember we said at the beginning of the show, you only buy running backs when you are a contender. Yes. If you're not a contender, you should 100% be honestly selling every running back on your roster because you don't want to win. Like, you don't want to win. And that window's too small, right? That window's too small. And why do you do this? Because literally everybody we just talked about. Because when you're ready to contend, it will be a time where you can go out and buy running backs for the cheap or even draft guys. Like right now in the right time and for Superflex leagues, if you're a contender, you're just drafting. You don't have to trade for a guy. You're drafting Jonathan Brooks.
Yep.
And for him 110 to 112. Like, you're getting Jonathan Brooks. You're getting the number one running back in the class. You could trade up. You could trade up and get Trey Benson. You could probably get Marshawn Lloyd or Jalen Wright in the back end of the second too. So like, you always get the running back is the last piece of the puzzle to make you smile. When you're about to do that, when you're about to finish that 5,000 piece puzzle, there's that last little piece in there. Like, yeah, look at me, crushed it. And you swipe it off the table. What a waste of time.
Who does puzzles?
Some people love chaos.
I like puzzles.
I do too. I'm just kidding.
I'm surprised that I do. I'm like, oh, I don't want to do a puzzle. Then I start doing. I'm like, oh, this is.
My wife and I used to have a tradition. I hope we bring it back, but for like 4 or 5 years in a row, every New Year, because like the season, Christmas season is always bonkers. We like refuse to do anything on New Year's. And on New Year's Eve, we'd put the girls to bed. We'd order a pizza. We'd turn on The Office, and we would do a puzzle from like 8:30 till just a little past midnight, and it was beautiful.
In sexy outfits?
No. Super boring, super lame.
I was trying to pop that blue pill, son. Tell me more. A little bottle of Chardonnay?
I know what Ashley's getting for Christmas next year.
That's right.
A sexy outfit and a puzzle.
And a blue pill.
We were talking about we just replaced our washer and dryer not long ago, and we were telling our friends, like, hey, if you need a washer and dryer, like, our washer has 2 washers. There's like a mini washer on the bottom. And they're like, what's that for? I was like, lingerie. And they're like, we looked at Ashley, they're like, you have a lot of lingerie? She's like, no. I was like, that's why it's a mini washer. I was like, we've been married for 14 years. I've been walking around in sexy lingerie. So, yeah, always the running back's the last piece. And this is why, because, you go trade for Raheem Mostert, and you can live and die by that 1 year window because you're living and dying in that window,
it's
right?
The sexy lingerie. You just throw it in at the end.
Very sexy. Do a little puzzle. Put those pieces together. So we'll be back in tomorrow's episode. We're going to talk about some running back sells.
Get them out of here.
And then we'll have the Nerd Herd Show. Again, I will not be here next week for the wide receiver buys. I think Jared will stop back in on our remote show. But let's come back.
Sounds good. Adios.